we toyed with the idea that the guest had to sing the ROS Goss theme song, make one up and sing one.
Yeah,
And
no.
Hey everyone, I'm Mandy Dwight of Dwight & Company. We're a boutique sales and marketing firm specifically for automation and robotics companies. I'm also the host of the ROS Goss podcast, which you're watching today. I'm here with my good industry friend, Courtin from Tecsys.
The company, not the state.
Not the state.
Yes.
I thank you for clarifying. And today, I've known Guy forever, good industry friend, and I said, Guy, I'm thinking about going and sitting in the most distracting place in Boston, the Public Garden, filming a podcast where we talk about something that has nothing to do with the Public Garden, robotics and automation, and kind of the state of the industry. And Guy said, I have the absolute perfect place.
And you didn't find it, but that's okay. We'll pretend this is the perfect place. So for those of you who don't know, so introduction first. Thanks, Mandy, for having me. I really appreciate it. So again, Guy Courtin, I'm the Vice President of Industry and Global Alliances at Tecsys. We are a Canadian-based software company, but I've been in supply chain over 25 years, and part of that time when we met was when I started working in the robotics space. But what I told you to do is we had to find the Goodwill hunting bench.
Yes.
And you failed. That's okay.
Yeah, well, Guy, there were, in my defense, there were a lot of tourists on the bench.
You should have kicked them out.
And I see some state park rangers walking around, and some things I just don't want to do on a Friday.
You should have been like, you like apples? You like apples?
Yes.
How about those apples? I got her number.
You got me, Guy. So yeah, we're in an iconic spot. If we're not super interesting today, hopefully maybe something walking by us will be interesting to you. There are some swan boats in the background. We thought about filming on the swan boats, but liability completely.
I'm sure you would have to pay some kind of park fee to do that. But
you know what?
Regardless,
we're worth it. That's what I tell myself all the time. We're worth it.
100%.
So Guy, we're both Boston people. And I said to Guy, let's do the podcast. When are you in Boston? Because the thing about Guy is never in Boston, even though he's from Boston. We joke, we call him the international man of mystery. He's always on a flight. I've run into him in the Delta Lounge before, just because we're always here, there, and everywhere. But part of him being out there is he sees all of the things, so if you want to know what the best robotic industry trends are, what automation is hot, what people are looking at, what the state of the industry is, you call up Guy and you have a conversation about it.
Appreciate it. I actually was just on a plane yesterday.
Where'd you go?
I was coming back from Houston, and actually, side note, I was at one of our customers, and we did talk about robotics.
Oh, good.
So we can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, they were certainly looking at some smaller version of VLM, ASRS type stuff. So it's really interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Well, that's the thing. I really want to dig into today what trends you're seeing out there, because we sell the robotic solutions. We're system integrators. We're software companies, hardware companies, but it doesn't matter about the technology. It matters about what the pain point that the user has and what it really does and solves for them. So what are you hearing?
Yeah, I think it's a great lead-in to Mandy's. I think what we have to remember, you and I and everybody else, and all of us who are on this side of the house, so to speak, right? The ones that are selling robots, selling solutions, we live and breathe this every day.
Yeah, true.
Right? When you and I first started working together, you were selling robotic solutions, I was selling robotic solutions. And what I've learned is that we would go into some customers and start talking about robots as if they knew everything we knew.
Yeah.
And what I've realized is we have to remind ourselves that most, if not all of our customers that we talk to have a day job. And that day job does not involve using robots. Robots are a tool to make their day job better, more efficient, more effective. So I think the first thing that I've seen and really sort of try to make sure I remind myself every day is that when I do talk to my customers and prospects and talk to people in the industry, is that they don't live and breathe this.
Yeah,
right?
that's so true.
They are doing things like for us at Tecsys, they're doing things in the healthcare space. They're doing things in distribution, in automotive parts, in HVAC, right? Sometimes in retail. So they're focused on doing things like taking care of patients, right? Moving product in and out of the door. They're not worried about, what's the latest flavor of an AMR or a VLM or a GTP. So I think that's the first thing that I've been seeing a trend of, which is where we stand in the industry in terms of those who are selling it. Like everything technology, we're way ahead of the people that are actually going to use it.
Yeah.
And what I have found, which is really, I think, refreshing recently, is that if you go back 2-3 years, I think a lot of times there was this sort of awe. If I came in and told you a robot, people were like, whoa, okay, you're smart.
Yeah.
I got to buy your stuff. Today, what I'm seeing is people are smarter, right? The buyer's smarter. They're pushing back. They're asking the right questions. They're not just saying, oh, you're telling me this AMR is going to reduce my pick rate, so I should buy right away. They're asking the next question. Well, what does that mean for takeaway? What does that mean for induct? What does it mean about where my inventory sits in the warehouse? What does it mean about my shelving and all this? They're asking the right questions.
Right, yeah.
So I think what I've seen, which is really encouraging, is that the buyer has become smarter about the solutions and the availability and what's out there. That's the big one that I've seen recently. And I think it's hard for robotic vendors because now we actually have to work harder.
It's a lot harder,
It's a lot harder. But I think it's also better for the industry because now when the consumer actually buys a robot, they're going to go into it eyes wide open as opposed to just buying it because they feel like they're pressured into it because it's this cool robot. So I think that's good overall for the industry. Harder for robotic vendors because we got to do better selling. But better for the industry as a whole because now I think the results will be more realistic. And I think people will actually understand what it is they're getting and what problems they can actually address with the robot.
I mean, that's so interesting. Yeah, but you're right. There's been a change, an evolution there with the end user, with the buyer. So what has contributed to that?
I think a lot of it has to do with just people learning more.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it has a lot to do at some levels with folks like yourselves who are out there sort of consulting and helping these end users cut through the marketing BS and the unknowns, right? And I think that's a big help. I also think, when you think about the evolution of robotics, right? Kiva Systems was bought by Amazon, it's like 14 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. It's not that long ago, right?
No.
Companies like Six River and Locus and all these are not even in their air quotes teenage years yet. So part of it too is that in the past 3-4 years, we've just had so much of this evolution and people learning about it and the buyer being smarter and buyer asking the right questions and doing the research and all this. But also the earlier robotic systems, I think people have actually started to see them in the wild.
Right.
And actually see what they can do well, what they can't do. And I think that's been good. And in the meantime, I think robotics companies, which I think is also very positive, are constantly trying to grow what they can do, right? So if we look at Locus buying, moving away from they still have the Origin robot, but buying another robot to do heavier freight.
Right.
You look at obviously at Geek Plus with all their solutions. You look at Ocado who bought Six River. Now they can do the ASRS and the Six River AMR. So you're seeing more and more of these vendors being able to say, you know what, I don't need to say, here's my robot, you need to buy it and you force your format into it. It's what do you need to solve and do I have a robot in my arsenal that I can solve that problem?
You've mentioned something interesting, right? Because you go into a facility and a robot doesn't work alone, right? It's a flow, it's a softwares work together, hardwares work together. And you mentioned some consolidation of companies.
Yes.
So that to me is very interesting because it used to be you bought this from this vendor, like back when you and I worked together, right? Bought this from this vendor, and then we mashed it together and hopefully we were friendly enough to do that.
Right. And I think that's the other part too, which I've seen, which is really interesting, is we are asking the customers asking the hard question. Well, wait a minute. If I have a VLM and I have a conveyor and I want to put AMRs in, how do they all talk together? Yeah. Now they may be not perfect orchestration, but I want some fact. I can't have these in islands because then all I want to do is, and I certainly am not going to say I'm an academic on this, but right, the theory of constraints, right? If I optimize in one part of my warehouse, maybe I just push that constraint somewhere else. So I've optimized on my pick area, but my put away or my takeoff or my induct has now become such a mess that overall my warehouse has lost efficiency.
Right.
And I think the consumer is starting to figure that out or see that. And to your point, the robotics companies themselves are now at some level being forced to say, if you want to stay relevant, you need to be able to address a lot more than just, hey, I can do each is picking really well, or I can do pallet moving really well. Okay, can you do the next ancillary piece on top of that well, or can you partner with someone to do it well? But you need to have a story, right? You need to have a vision to be able to tell the customer, hey, if I'm going to do this for you, I know that these are the issues might come up. I have a way to solve for those. Maybe it's not me. but maybe it's my ecosystem. I can do it. Now, it doesn't mean it's all going to happen overnight. This is what I do, right? And I think that's the other part is not a big bang where we can do everything in 12 months and it's all taken care of. But I need to see some kind of vision. And I think that's what we're seeing is consolidation. I think that's what we're starting to see more automation partners, players themselves try to either acquire or build their own other solutions, form factors. And I think we're only going to continue to see that.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that. I mean, because the end user, what they've always been measured on is productivity and ROI and all those different things. And they took some gambles in the past that didn't pay off, which could have cost them salary, jobs, things like that.
Yeah, and I think and it's interesting. That's something that I'm still debating in my mind, if you will, because you're right, the ROI, but then I always wonder, are we measuring the right ROI with some robotics? Because sometimes it's a very, air quotes, traditional, you give me X amount of robots in Y amount of months, it's going to take away Z amount of FTE and increase, ABC amount of throughput. Yeah, I get it. That is one way of looking at it. But part of me thinks, are we missing something bigger, which is, as warehouses themselves evolve, going from basically just, storing inventory and throughput to doing more complex things, do we need to start looking at, well, what is my warehouse going to look in 5 years?
Yeah.
And do I have the pieces in place today to prepare for that? And maybe that ROI, I can't measure for 5, 6, 7 years. Whereas we're sort of trained, you got to get it within a year.
Yeah. How do you work with the end user to see that? Because they're so laser focused sometimes.
That's the $1 million question, right? And I think that's the part where I to pimp you guys out, but pump you, right?
Hey, thanks.
Working with folks like you to understand that, because it has to be a vision beyond what is my near-term problem. Yeah. Right. You have to be able to have that conversation of what am I trying to do in the next 5, 10 years with this facility, with the facilities I might have. Yeah. And I think until you have that vision, you don't understand exactly what am I investing in today. So, for example, I think what I remember seeing right during the pandemic, right? Huge explosion in AMR sales. Yeah. Right. I was at Six River
Makes
then.
Sense.
Right. And we were seeing this. Locust, of course, we're seeing this. Geek Plus and others. Fetch, robotics at the time. And the reason being is you realize, looking back in hindsight, it's pretty basic. Well, we're all stuck at home. So e-commerce was going through the roof. We couldn't get labor in because we had COVID. Yep. And then when the labor was in, we couldn't have them massed together because we had to have, certain distances. So all of a sudden, in this very near term, the solution of, hey, I can just drop in these AMRs. And oh, by the way, like at Six River at the time, we realized, well, I can do the mapping remotely. I don't need to have people in the warehouse. So I could literally send someone with a camera and map the warehouse. So I can do all the work remotely. Right. And you can very quickly get value, because now you're going to have this robot which is going to help you pick and carry the freight and do all that stuff to address this problem of e-commerce growth, of us being at home, no labor. Great. But then the pandemic went away, thankfully. Yeah. And then we saw e-commerce numbers sort of regress to the mean, right? So I will freely admit this. I was working at Six River, which is part of Shopify. I remember Shopify and Toby saying, e-commerce is going to be 20, 30, 40, 50%. And I'm like, look at the trend line. Like once the pandemic ended, we went back to about 20% of overall retail. Still a great number. Yeah. But the reason I bring this up is that was a response to a very finite, big problem. But to your point, I think what we need is to have more vision about, well, where is this going to go in 5 years? Right. Now, like everything, you're still going to have, I would say 80% are just going to think, nope, I'm going to go back my traditional methodology. Give me a 6-month ROI. I'm not going to invest in it. Fine. What about the 20% that are cutting edge, right? Why are companies like Amazon investing so much in robotics? Now, it's all their stuff. I get it. Yeah. But recently news of Amazon just investing a tremendous amount in new robotics in their warehouses, right? Right. They obviously understand that this is the long-term vision, what they're trying to do. So I think that's a conversation we need to force the industry to have. It's not easy, right? Because it goes back to the whole thing of it's change management. No one likes change. Back to, I think what you said earlier too, it's I've seen this 1,000 times, I'm sure you have too, is you go talk to the head of operations and they're like, I got 2 more years till I retire.
Oh, I hear that a lot.
What you're gonna ask me to do? What? Yeah, I'm not.
It's very
that.
safe. You don't want to rock the boat. Just sail out, get your cake, and go.
Once I retire, you talk to the next person.
Yeah, it's their problem.
It's their problem, but I don't want to risk my pension. And I get that. Right?
Yeah,
I get
it's
that.
real.
That's the part I think. Now, I hate to bring this up, but as we have Gen X and millennials coming in, it's like, is there an opportunity for there's going to be some turnover where you are going to have leadership who is going to have more of that comfort with automation and other parts of technology, and B, have more of a long-term vision on this stuff? I don't know, but I think, I don't want to say it's a hope, but I do think there's some demographical change that might help with that. But I also think, for me personally, looking at the space, warehouses are becoming more and more dynamic and being asked to do so much more than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It has to change. Like, people have to realize that they cannot continue to invest the way they used to and look at ROIs the way they used to. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, with that said, brownfield versus greenfield, right? So greenfield, we know that's a far off. That's a 5+ year plan. Brownfield, you're in it today.
Yep.
So what are you seeing? Like, because the economy is a little, we're going to leave that there. But what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, the economy is a little there. We certainly don't have to bring up the T word, tariffs, because that's a whole other can of worms.
Well, that's another episode.
That's that's a 4-week episode. Yeah, because it's going to change every 2 days.
Yeah, you could film that every day.
Absolutely. So what I'm seeing, which is interesting, is there is right now sort of a handbrake because of the economy.
Yeah,
there is a handbrake where people are saying, and we just joked, but true about this too, about tariffs, where people are saying, you know what, I'm going to wait. That project I was going to do, let's put it off for another quarter.
I'm hearing that a ton.
Yeah, let's hold off. Let's protect cash, and let's see what's going to happen. Okay, I get that, and I appreciate that from the standpoint of, if I were a CFO, if I were a CEO, whatever, like, you got to protect cash. You got to. Now, with that being said, I always remind people too, like, when we've had big recessions and things like that, some of the companies that were created during the recessions are companies like Microsoft and Google, right? I mean, people took chances.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's an interesting.
Even when the
Thank
economy
you for putting some positivity on.
Well, even when
things.
It's one of those, I'm going to completely butcher this quote, but I remember.
Please do.
I will. Joe Kennedy said one time, like, I think when his shoe shine boy was giving him stock advice, it was time to short the stock market, right? So it takes sort of the inverse of that, right? When everybody's panicking, it's time. And I think someone else said this, like, when there's blood in the street, go buy real estate. That might be a movie quote.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's a good one. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah.
But it's true. It's like when people are hoarding money and they're nervous, take chances.
Yeah. When there's a body in the Back Bay Fens, you buy a condo over there. Is that what you're telling me? Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Prices are low. And that body's going to be fished out at some point and no one's going to remember it. So that's what you have to do. But that takes a lot of courage, obviously.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of support from leadership, from the board, from investors. And let's face it, investors and investors, sometimes all they care about is next quarter, right? And they panic on things. Yeah. And so I think that's the challenge. And I think the challenge is, how do we, or how do you identify the companies that are willing to take those chances? I think those are the ones that might take the chance, the opportunity now to make those investments, to then position themselves when things do get back to, air quotes, normal and going up and people are spending, that they're ready for it.
How do you identify those people?
It's a challenge. If I knew that, I don't know.
You'd be too rich to sit here and talk to me.
I'd be sitting up in one of those buildings looking down on you right now. But no, joking. It's hard. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It is all about, and this is, I apologize, this is business school bingo 101.
Say it.
You have to identify the ones who are willing to take the risk, the ones who are willing for change, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
The ones that are market leaders, but it's like, how do you identify those? I don't know.
Sometimes it's a gut feeling and you just don't know, right?
Sometimes it's a gut feeling. I think sometimes I think a lot of times, and this I will say, I remember this from my days when I was at I2, it is super cliche again. It is about personalities, right? Do you identify the leadership of certain companies who they themselves have that inner desire to try things and to take risks,
right?
And then you sell it to them, right? Because then they're going to want to see it. And then when I was at I2, I remember this all the time. Like, side note, like, we would always say, for our marketing efforts, You find the one or two people at that company that you can tell are hungry for attention, like and you reach, hey, you want to do a press release? You want to do an interview? You want to do this, that?
You want to do a podcast?
You want to do a podcast. And then you get them because there's a personal value in it for them. But the same thing here. I think it's one of those where for robotic vendors, for technology vendors, it goes back, get away from feature function.
Yeah.
It's all about how do I identify the personalities, the leadership, the people that are willing to take that risk and go on the journey, regardless of what industry, right? You might find someone that's working in a pulp mill, but they've got great vision and they're hungry to do stuff. Latch onto them, right? See what they can do. Maybe someone who's at a AI startup, but you realize they're kind of an old fuddy-duddy and they're not going to do anything.
No.
So I think a lot of it, especially in times like this, comes down to the personalities. And I think for what I've seen from the robotics side is being able to identify those leaders who have that vision, who get away from saying, well, what's the ROI on the 6-month basis?
They get it.
Who will say, oh, okay, if I put these robots in today, here's what I could do in 12 months. Right?
Yeah.
And if I could do that in 12 months, I can go to my bosses and say, here's our new business plan. So I'll give you an example. We talked to a 3PL who's trying to figure out how do they add more value-added services. And one of the things they recognize is, if I could put more in automation, I could free up all the space in my warehouse to then do things like kitting, right? Or
I'm hearing
returns,
that from 3PLs. It's funny that you say that.
Right?
Yeah. Do
returns, do last mile assembly.
Yeah.
Those are all value-added services, right? If all I could do is free up 1,000 square feet because I put in an ASRS or a VLM to take that inventory off the floor, I can now allocate that space to do some value-added services. And guess what? Now I can charge my customer a premium, right? I can get stickier with the customer. So those are the ones I think you need to be able to, if I'm an automation, I'm a software vendor, like I have to identify and be able to see it. Like I'll give you a side story. Like I was in Houston visiting a customer. They're super aggressive in the standpoint of they're like, we're not in this box. Like we want to solve these problems. We're not just going to focus on these. And what that's done is that's given them the flexibility, the leadership to really pursue different things. And some with us, some on their own. But it's been really refreshing. But again, it comes down to what? It's that personality.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, thinking about when I've worked with people before, that's who you pick.
That's who you pick.
I mean, you mentioned the word AI. I'm going to go there.
You had to go there.
I know. Sure. I mean, what do you want to... AI has been around forever, but now here it is again. And I don't know. What are you thinking about it?
All right, so here's my shtick, right? AI's been around, since 1956.
Yeah.
So
I was going to give it a 90, so okay, 56.
I remember studying AI when I was in college, and I went to college.
We don't date ourselves.
Yeah, we don't date ourselves. The year didn't start with a 2, it started with a 1.
Yeah.
So, anyways, AI's been around forever. I think, having said that, AI is a tool. It's a super powerful tool. It holds a lot of promise. It is just a tool.
Yeah.
If we go back a couple of years, remember blockchain?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
haven't heard about that guy in a while.
Where did that go? That was supposed to completely change supply chain, right? Before that, the cloud. Now, the cloud is everywhere.
Yeah, the cloud. Yeah, it's here.
Before it's above us. Before that, I mean, the internet, right? We how soon you forget, but the internet hasn't been around that long. It's been around for a while, but it has been around for like centuries.
Yeah. True.
I worked at Forrester here in Massachusetts in the late 90s, right when the internet was starting.
Yeah.
And I look back on those days and I'm like, I had customers who would tell me it was a fad.
That's wild.
Yeah. I had customers, one who's no longer around, named Borders Bookstore, who would tell me when I went to meet with them.
They missed a couple things.
Well, this is the part that scared me, is they always tell us, we'd walk in the room, they say, don't talk about Amazon. And we're kind of like, well, that's who's eating your lunch.
You gotta talk. You gotta always know who's watch
but
back.
But they're like, no, don't talk about Amazon. They don't exist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, no, they do. But yeah, that was 1999.
Yeah.
That was not that long ago. So the reason I bring it up is I think it's like AI, right? AI is a great tool. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I think anybody out there needs to think about AI. My advice to everybody, though, is when you think about AI, and I talk to this about robotics vendors and others is it fundamentally comes back to the data.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for robotics companies, there's a really interesting play here because robotics companies are a tremendous consumer of data and a tremendous producer of data, right? The digital exhaust that comes out of robots is breathtaking, right? When I worked at Six River, and I'm sure in your forays in the robotics space, like think about all the pieces of data that we're gathering every millisecond off of that robot, right? Where it's moving, what it's picking, where it's picking, how it picked, what was delaying it, where this pallet is in the aisle that it's not supposed to be. And then aggregate that over a whole shift, over a whole week, over a whole month, over a whole year, and you see the tremendous amount of digital exhaust you get, which for an AI engine, that's gold.
Yeah.
Right? But it's one of those, again, where it's, be smart, right? Be smart, it's this tool. I always talk about narrow AI, which is really about focus on AI use cases that have definable data set, definable outcome, and definable rules, right? So don't try to boil the ocean. What drives me crazy was I hear a lot of supply chain companies, oh, we're going to put AI in here and it's going to solve everything. No,
it's not.
If you're going to tell me I'm going to use AI in the warehouse to do better pick path optimization, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? I've got a warehouse. It's a finite defined area. I know the rules. I know where the SKUs are. I know how fast my pickers can go. Great. Let's use AI to figure out how to do that better. So I would say AI, certainly do not ignore it, but also do not get caught up on the axle and say it's going to solve world hunger. It's not. It's a fantastic tool. With automation, I think there's a play for AI because of the fact automation has the data, has the rules, has the use cases. So I think from that perspective, automation might be one of the areas where AI could actually get or see tremendous gains, as opposed to saying, well, I'm going to do AI for supply chain planning.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, you're talking about supply chain planning. And so I know you really well, right? But I went on your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you do some work with University of Tennessee, their supply chain program. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was great. So I used to be on the board of the UTK Supply Chain Council.
Go
it was
Volunteers.
Fantastic. Go Vols, go Orange. It was great.
Yep.
Fantastic organization, fantastic school. Shameless plug for UTK.
Yeah.
Anybody's interested in supply chain, undergrad or graduate.
They have a good program.
Amazing program. Amazing program. So a lot of the work I did, which was really good, is, being on the board with a number of tier one customers, Procter & Gamble, Amazon, Target.
I love to see the giving back.
The giving back part was great. And it was really, what was great about it is to be able to talk to these supply chain professionals, on a quarterly basis about what they're dealing with, what they're seeing, et cetera. So that was really good. What was really also rewarding was working with the kids. And I called kids, some were PhD students, but we're old.
We're all kids. We're all kids.
But it was great because and what was really fascinating, and this I always took away, is 75% of them wanted to work in procurement. Yeah, that's the look I gave when I heard. I was like, why do you want to work in procurement? Now, part of it was a lot like P&G and Kraft and all that had a lot of jobs to come in and do procurement.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot.
And I get it, but it was fascinating to have those conversations with them because the students were just like, oh, it's so cool. We get to do buying strategies and sourcing strategies. I'm like, procurement?
Call me in 10 years.
Yeah, I'm like, call me in 5 minutes after you do that, but good for you. So it was really interesting. So it was really rewarding. So Ted Stank is the head of it, and he always gives me trouble about coming back and working, which I would love to. It's a great organization. I think it's one of the hidden gems for supply chain.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the hidden gems for supply chain recruiting.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the hidden gems for just supply chain knowledge and being part of that group. Just the knowledge sharing in there was fantastic. And again, UTK was where I did a lot of stuff, but Penn State is a great program. Michigan State, Stanford, Northeastern here in Boston has a fantastic supply chain program. I think I love it. It's really encouraging to see that supply chain is now becoming, it's not just buried in operations.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing, as it should be. Don't just do procurement. There's other cool stuff in supply chain.
It's so true. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of closing our session today, but Guy, we're salespeople at heart and business development people. And this is a little backstory about Guy, right? So we're salespeople. We're on the road all the time. You kind of take what little joys you can have sometimes from being on the road. And Guy and I, one thing that we screenshot and send to each other all the time, it's an espresso martini. So it's like, oh, I found a good one in, you name the city. Was it
Des Moines, Iowa. Yeah.
I found a good, I'll write that on my list when I get there. We also get the Mandy, never go there and have this one.
Yes.
So with that, I have something for you.
Oh.
It's not an espresso martini because we get definitely arrested for drinking in this park. Not that I'd know.
Not that anybody would.
Yeah, but I have something for you. So we have espresso martini social club hats. Oh, is the director laughing? Because we have one for you. So come put this on. And Forrest, is that you over there laughing? We have one for you to come put these on.
I love
you. Were having such a good hair day too, Guy.
I was. Well, I did.
So this is gonna blow away. We look like jerks. But anyway, so I was telling one of our mutual friends about this, and she's like, "Who's in this club?
Oh,
is this a club I can be in?" And I said, "Well, can you show up to Boston on the 11th?" And she said, "No, I can't.
You can't be in the club."
So she sent this.
Very nice.
So our friend Allie Walker, also in the social club.
I'm surprised she didn't show up because of all the people.
She's going on vacation with her family. They're going to 30A. She's like, "I love you, but 30A." Yeah. So anyway, I sent that to Allie Walker and talking about supply chain. She's like, "Where did it go? I can't find it." And I sent her a picture of the Amazon box on her front step. And she's like, "Oh, I'll go find that. Oh yeah, we have that." So thank you, supply chain. So
it wasn't her 3PL, right? That was delivering it.
No. And shout out to Allie Walker. So put my hat on. So this looks so good. I'm not wearing this the rest. But Allie Walker's like, "I'm wearing that all over 30A. So watch for those pictures."
All right.
So anyway, Guy Courtin, thank you so much for being here from Tecsys, not the state, the company. Mandy Dwight, host of ROS Goss, also Dwight and Company, boutique sales and marketing for automation and robotics companies. I'm forced to say that with every episode because it's the sponsor. Yeah, I guess I'm the sponsor. And Guy, any last thoughts?
No, this is great, man. I appreciate it, and look forward to the next episode if you guys will have me on again.
Absolutely. This team needs to come over. We have to put on our hats and I'll wave goodbye to everybody. Katie, nobody looks that good here, Katie. It's how it is.
I'm not wearing shoes. Okay.
I appreciate. Bye. I appreciate that you wore the Wimbledon outfit too for today.
Do you like it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.